Dear students, so this is human physiology and the course code is BCHM231. This is lecture 6 of this course, and the topic is digestion and absorption of macromolecules via gastrointestinal tract. And this is the part 1 of this topic. I am Dr. Musaddiq Ibrahim, Assistant Professor, Department of Chemistry, Howard University of Science and Technology, and you can access all these lectures by first of all logging into the KCMS account, and then you will find the relevant link which will lead you to the KUST Media Server portal, which is ms.cohort.edu.pk. Now the macromolecules basically means the proteins, carbohydrates and fat molecules which need to be digested inside the digestive system so that they can be broken down and converted into monomers and ultimately absorbed for the energy purposes. Now the topics to be discussed in this lecture include the digestion along with the anatomy of the gastrointestinal tract, secretions of digestion, the small intestine and the large intestine. Now moving towards the digestion. So digestion is the process of changing food into simple components which the body is then able to absorb to use it for different types of purposes. Now in digestion, the digestive tract, which is also known as the gastrointestinal tract, is the area where digestion and absorption are taking place. So the route for the digestion, it starts from the mouth, and then you have a specific region within the digestive tract which is known as esophagus. So after the food is entering into the mouth, it is being reaching to the esophagus. Then from esophagus the food reaches to the stomach, and then from stomach it reaches to the small intestine, and finally reaching the large intestine as a whole. Now moving towards the gastrointestinal tract anatomy. So this figure shows that what are the different parts of the gastrointestinal tract and where they are present and how the food is being digested through all the parts of the digestive system and ultimately reaching the rectum. So mouth is the first area from where the food is being taken, and then the chewing and churning process is taking place in the mouth along with the secretions from the salivary glands, which are basically secreting the saliva, and within the digestive tract you have other parts as well. For example, the trachea, which leads to the lungs, and along with it you have pharynx, which is present side by side to the trachea, and then you have epiglottis, which is covering a lid type of structure which prevents the passage of food into the airway, which is going towards the lungs. Afterwards, you can see that here this portion is known as upper esophageal sphincter. So these are specialized types of muscles which are allowing the chewed food to go down the esophagus. And then before entering the stomach, you have the lower esophageal sphincter, which is also regulating the amount of food which is entering the stomach, as well as preventing the reflux of food from the stomach into the esophagus. Now, in this area after the esophagus, you have the stomach, the gallbladder, which is secreting the different types of secretions. You have the pyloric sphincter, the bile duct, ileocecal valve. There is a small portion which you can see, which is coming out as a outgrowth from the large intestine, which is known as appendix. Now the blue color is the large intestine, which is this one, which is also known as colon. And then ultimately you have the rectum and anus. On the right hand side, you have the pancreatic duct along with the pancreas. So is the small intestine, which is divided into duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. So, and also the liver is present on the left side as well. So if you see the anatomy of the gastrointestinal tract as a whole, you can see that there are a lot of glands or organs present which are secreting their specific secretions, kind of enzymes and amylase and bile, and so they are helping in the digestion of the food. And the small intestine, it is divided into three segments, that is duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. And from the stomach, the area from where the food, the partially digested food, it enters the small intestine, which is here in violet color. So from the stomach, the food is entering the small intestine through the pyloric sphincter. So this pyloric sphincter, these are the specialized type of muscles which again regulate the amount of partially digested food which is entering the small intestine. And also you have a ileocecal valve which is present between the small intestine and the large intestine. So these are also specialized type of muscles which regulate the amount of partially digested food or residual fecal material which is entering the large intestine. And then the large intestine or colon, it is reaching the rectum area and then the anus, from where the defecation or excretion of the waste material is taking place. Now moving towards the digestion. So the digestion, it directly starts from the mouth. As we ingest the food, so the chewing and mastication and swallowing starts from the mouth. Now the mastication is the up and down and side to side movement of the lower jaw that assists in reducing particles of solid food, making them more easily swallowed. Teeth usually act as the grinding and biting surface during the digestion process in the mouth. Now, the bolus, it is formed within the mouth, and it is a portion of food swallowed at one time. Now, there are secretions which are pouring in the mouth, and basically that secretion is called saliva, so which is secreted by the salivary glands, and it is composed of water, salts, enzymes, mucus, and the purpose for the saliva to be secreted into the mouth is to moisten the food and help in swallowing the food. And as a result of this saliva, the carbohydrate digestion, it starts from the mouth. Now the secretions of digestion, so as we are discussing the mouth area, so in this figure you can see that there are salivary glands present below the ear area and in the lower jaw. So they are secreting saliva, which is helping in the mastication, moistening of food within the mouth, and also helping in swallowing the food. So the saliva is composed of a variety of electrolytes, including potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, bicarbonate, and phosphate. Also found in saliva are some immunoglobulins, proteins, enzymes, mucins, and nitrogenous products, for example, urea and ammonia. So one thing to note here is that the saliva is a very dilute fluid which is secreted by the salivary glands, and it is composed of more than 99% of water. Now in the process of digestion, we have the esophagus, which is also referred as the food canal. It connects the mouth to the stomach, as we discussed in the anatomy of the gastrointestinal tract. And in the beginning of the esophagus, epiglottis is also present, which closes the airway so that the food may not go to the lungs. Now, the bolus, it is moved along by the process of peristalsis. Now, the peristalsis is a series of wave-like muscle contractions that move the food through the digestive tract. The process starts in the esophagus, where strong wave-like motions of the stomach muscle move balls of swallowed food to the stomach. And then between the lower esophagus region and the start of the stomach, you have the lower esophageal sphincter. So these are, as we discussed earlier, that these are special types of muscles which keep the food from backing up into the esophagus. So sometimes people, they have acidity. So in that case, in extreme cases, the vomiting may also occur. So in order to avoid the medium range acidity and vomiting, these sphincter are present at every specific site within the digestive tract, so that to regulate the amount of partially digested food which is going to the other successive portion of the digestive tract. Now, indigestion, which is carrying out within the stomach, so what is happening is in the stomach is that the collecting and churning of the food is taking place. So churning means proper mixing of the food particles. Now, within the stomach, the gastric glands are present, and the purpose of the gastric glands is to secrete gastric juice, which is composed of water, enzymes, and importantly the hydrochloric acid. Now, the purpose for secretion of these gastric juice is to kill most bacteria which is present within the food, and begin the protein digestion. And the gastric glands, they also secrete mucus to protect the inner lining of the stomach from the effect of hydrochloric acid. Another part which is called chyme. So as a result of this collecting and churning of food within the stomach, the chyme is formed. So chyme is a semi-liquid mass of partially digested food. And within the stomach, at the end area, you have the pyloric sphincter present, a specialized type of muscles which regulates the passage of chyme into the small intestine. So slowly and gradually the chyme is being transferred to the small intestine with the help of pyloric sphincter, so that not too much chyme is entering the small intestine, and not too low amount of chyme is entering the small intestine, because if too much amount of chyme is entering the small intestine, so then the reabsorption of minerals, vitamins, water within the small intestine will not be possible. And that's why the pyloric sphincter, it regulates the amount of chyme entering the small intestine. Now the secretions of digestion. So this figure shows that what are the pH of common substances, and what is the pH of the stomach as a result of secretions which are pouring in the stomach as well as in the small intestine. So the upper bar is for basic pH, and the red one, the lower one, is the acidic pH. So there are different materials or ingredients whose pH is given here. For example, oven cleaner has a pH of 13, battery acid has a pH of 0, around 0, vinegar has a pH of around 3, and household ammonia has a pH of around 11. So if you see that the bile and the pancreatic juice, so they are slightly basic in nature, and they are being secreted into the small intestine. Now the saliva, that is about neutral, and that is being secreted into the mouth. And if you look at the gastric juice, so its pH is quite low, which is around 2, and that is being secreted into the stomach for digestion of food. Now moving on about the process of digestion, after the stomach, the small intestine is the area where the food or partially digested food enters. And the small intestine has 3 segments. Now the first one is the duodenum, and it has also an opening from common bile duct, and the bile duct, these are tube structure which secrete fluids from liver and gallbladder. Now the bile, which is secreted from bile duct and basically coming from the gallbladder, it emulsifies the fat, so it is helping in the digestion of the fat. And the pancreas, so it is secreting amylase, which breaks down the carbohydrates, and along with the amylase we have the sodium bicarbonate, which is being secreted, and the purpose for sodium bicarbonate secretion is to neutralize the acidic chyme as well as the lipase enzyme. Now the second segment of the small intestine is known as jejunum, and the third and the last segment of the small intestine is known as ileum. Now the ileum has a ileocecal valve, so that is a valve between the ileum of the small intestine and the starting of the large intestine. And the function of ileocecal valve is to prevent materials from flowing back from the large intestine to the small intestine, and these are the composed of special type of sphincter muscles. Now in terms of digestion process, after the small intestine it comes the large intestine, which is also known as colon. So what is happening in large intestine is the reabsorbing and eliminating processes taking place in large intestine. Along with it, the fermentation of undigested residues is taking place within the large intestine with the help of bacteria. And the large intestine, it ends at rectum, which we discussed in the anatomy of the gastrointestinal tract, where the water and some minerals are absorbed. And finally you have the anus, that is a specialized type of sphincter muscle that controls the defecation, which is the excretion of fiber residues, some waste materials and some water. Now references, so these are the reference books which were consulted for the preparation of this lecture. The first one is the Leninger's Biochemistry. Second one is Comprehensive Biochemistry by Longman. The third one is General Biochemistry by Cleaner and Morton. The fourth one is Textbook of Medical Physiology by Guyton and Hall. And the fifth one is Biological Chemistry by A.R. Mahler and E.H. Morris. So if you want to further understand and further clear your concept, so these are the books which I will recommend. And if you can get the Guyton and Hall Textbook of Medical Physiology, so you can find the detailed amount of process of digestion and the anatomy of the digestive tract and all these in this book. Thank you.